In this video, we're going to discuss time management for sales. It's a three-part video. And in the first part, it's a sort of an introduction to time management. And it's my take on time management. I think that this is probably one of the most important causes that I've made to date. And I think that everybody battles at some degree with time management. I don't think there's anybody that's got time management pinned down 100%. I think we all just go through different levels of time management issues. Some are better than the others. But the thing is that if you think you have a time management issue, you probably do. And you probably do for the task that you are aware of. They might be things that you should be considering, or other items, things that you should be doing that you're not even aware of. So the time management issue that you currently have is for things that you are aware of. There might be a whole lot of other things that are going on. And this is what this introduction is about. I'd like to look at it this way. You got to view the world through task spectacles. You can call them tasktacles. It's probably not the best term for this, but I might change it later on. It might stay, I don't know. For now, we're going to call it tasktacles. So when you wake up in the morning, you got to put on your tasktacles. And what I mean by this is that when I engage in any conversation, whether it's on the phone, through chats, or if I get an email and I'm talking to a customer via email, my mind starts to identify tasks within this conversation already. Now, there are some apparent tasks, like for example, if you're talking to a customer and they are talking about stuff they need to purchase, that's apparent, and it's quite obvious that these are tasks that you'll have to do a quote for this customer. But they might say things in that conversation as well that you may not be focused on those parts, maybe less important parts of the conversation, but I think as a whole they might be important. For example, if you're speaking to a customer and they tell you that they're looking to buy a freezer, and you start thinking about what freezer they're looking at. Are they looking for a -40, a -20, an ultra low freezer? And the first task, the most apparent task for you is to find out what they need to actually do the quote. But they might say in this conversation that they're trying to pull some money together for this funding, for this study that's funded by John Hopkins from USA, that are funding some other labs as well in South Africa. So to me, that will be the next task. What other labs are John Hopkins funding in South Africa? And then they may say that, you know what, also there are some other funds coming through to the departments as well. But for right now, she just needs, or the customer you're speaking to just needs a quote on the freezer. So another task may be, what other funds are in this department, or where are the funds going to, or who else in this department has funds. But it depends on the customer. I might also think that, you know what, if it's a new customer that I've gone to and never visited before, I might want to think, who are the important people in this department? Who are the decision makers? That's another task. So I may not be able to do everything in that week or even in that day, but I understand that I walk away from that discussion or that meeting with more than one task, with more than just doing the quote. And that's what Tasktacles is about. It's about looking at every conversation and trying to pull out the task from these conversations. So there might be a whole lot more going on. The thing is that the freezer is the most probably lucrative from this conversation, but there might be somebody else that are getting a bigger part of the pie, a bigger piece of the pie. There might be somebody that has to buy 20 freezers, but you're so focused on this one task that you didn't think to do a follow-up and find out who else has funding. See, the thing is, sometimes you might have to go back and do some research, and sometimes because the customer, you have limited time with the customer, and you try to let the conversation go where the customer wants to take it sometimes, and sometimes you might feel that it's too forward to ask the customer who else is getting funding. But if you develop this into a task, then maybe if you think about it outside this meeting, you could find possibly another way into that and get a solution for that some other way. Maybe you might have a friend that works in the department. But the first step is to identify all the tasks from a possible conversation, and this is what putting on your tasktacles means. Secondly, you need to break down tasks into one action task. For example, when you record your task, however you do it, it has to be simple, one action task. For example, if customer asks for a freezer and you realize that you don't know much about this product, they ask for a -150 freezer in this case, and you don't know much about this product, so you think that you would need to read this product, and then you also need to quote the customer. That's two tasks. So you should put down quote customer freezer, read up on -150. And the reason why you need to do this is that our last point is that you need to eventually tick these tasks out, and that gives you some gratification, gives you purpose of you moving forward somewhere. But also we have to apply a priority on these tasks. Sometimes you may not have enough time to read up on the freezer before you do the quote because the customer needs to purchase by the end of the day. But does that mean you never read up on a -150 freezer again? And this is the problem I find that most sales reps have had. I find sales reps have been in the industry for years and years, and yet do not know what their products have done. Now, I think it did occur to them at times to find out what does a freeze dye actually do. But I guess some of them are successful as well. Some of them have been getting sales, have been meeting the targets and meeting the budgets. But how much more successful you be if you actually know what you're selling? And if you develop a pattern of writing these things and converting these things in tasks into one action task and then prioritizing those tasks, you eventually get it done. You need to find a way to record tasks as soon as possible. And for me, if I'm with the customer, as soon as I leave that customer, sometimes obviously I have my book in front of me and my diary, and I write down things as the customer is speaking, but I convert that digitally as soon as I leave the customer. So even before my next meeting, the majority of the time I convert that into a task list somehow. Over the years, this method has changed of digitalizing my task or creating the task list. I started this process really early, and it began with yellow post-its that I used to use and keep in my pocket. And then over time, I developed the system using Outlook, Microsoft Outlook, and now we have Zoho, and it's so much better. I'm going to show you ways on how we can digitalize this and record this even on your mobile apps later on. But you need to put these tasks as soon as possible into some task format. It's like a dream. If you sleep and you have a dream, and if you don't think about this dream as soon as you wake up and recall, the aspects of the dream become more vague as you move on with the day. Just like tasks, there might be so many different tasks from a meeting, and if you choose to write this down later or enter it later, you might only remember the important ones like coating on the freezer, and you might be missing something really big that you could have. If you had only written this task down, you would have made some play towards this. You can also use notes to jot down ideas, long-term and complex tasks, things that really can't be broken down into one action, things like that might need to be broken down. Like, for example, learning about a freezer. Let's take the minus 150 freezer. That could be learning about a minus 50 freezer could be a one action task. But to get that done, you can use a note to break that down even further. For me, this could be like, you can use a note for this, which should not be within your normal tasks because we don't want to clutter your tasks as well. So this note could be, for example, email to ask them if they have presentations on freezers. This for me could be Google or YouTube videos. Search videos on YouTube about minus 150 freezers. And the more you think about this, the more you try to break this down, the more creative you can become. While thinking about this, firstly, I suppose that when I said learn about a minus 150 freezer, probably everybody who was listening to this video thinks the first thing to think Google. And that's a good idea. Google's easy to learn, but as you learn more about laboratory products, you realize that Google doesn't have the answers to exactly everything. It's not always the easiest way to go with some of the products. So if you think about this outside that task in the form of a note and jotting down ideas, you might come up with a much more creative idea. And use notes to jot down your creative ideas. For me, if I had to think on this at the top of my mind, yes, Google is one, YouTube, yes, email supplies is another one, yes. But I might also think that, who do I know has a minus 150 freezer? Which customer do I know has a minus 150? Maybe I could set up an appointment with them and ask them more about it from their point of view. That you might learn more in that meeting that you could probably learn in Google or supply videos, or you learn it from the user's point of view. So notes is where you get creative. And I'm going to show you how to categorize this later on, but this is just to bring your awareness to what the difference between notes and tasks. So you need to develop a habit of creating tasks from all types of communication. I've been talking about examples of actually speaking to somebody, but not all our communication happens in appointments. Some of our communication happens on WhatsApp. Some of our communication happens on Click. Some of our communication that we need to develop tasks for does not even involve customers. For example, you might be talking to a colleague and a fellow sales rep, and they might tell you, hey, I sold a tips buyer system to this water testing company, and you might think, you know what, we have water testing companies here, I should approach them. That's a task that should be developed into a task, and that might happen from even a very informal or very casual conversation. So you need to develop a habit of going to your task creation or wherever you're digitalizing or recording tasks as soon as any form of communication has happened. And like I said, it may not and it will not be only communication with customers. It will be communication with manufacturers. It will be communication with fellow staff members. It might even be communication. You might even be having a beer on the weekend and with your friend, and they tell you, hey, you know what, look, there's this new lab that's opening up, or they might point you in, or discuss something because they know you in the industry. That also can be a task. So make sure, even from WhatsApp and Click that we use, our internal messaging system, from virtual meetings, make sure that after every communication, whatever form it is, that you go and record tasks. When you create tasks, one action task from that. Live to tick off tasks. To me, I get this instant gratification of ticking off tasks. I feel if I start my morning and if I start accomplishing things, when I tick off the task, to me it is maybe not as not on the same level as getting an order, receiving an order, but it's really close to that because I feel that I'm accomplishing something and moving something. If I have a day that I've ticked off 5 to 6 tasks in that day, to me that feels like a great day for me and I'm already feeling happy and positive. So the more you can record tasks and the more you just live to tick off tasks, if anything, start your day by trying to accomplish just ticking off tasks. If you change your mindset just to try to live to tick off tasks, you'll get much more done in the day. In the next video, I'm going to show you some examples of using actual proper Zoho apps and recording some actual tasks.